What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the UNC Football Show, brought to you by TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel as well, that's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, is our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And, AJ, we got a fun show ahead, I'm calling it the Spring Practice Primer podcast. A lot of P's going on in there, but I think it kind of flows pretty well. And AJ, it's exactly.
We should have Brandon P on this podcast.
No, that's a great point, man. We have to call him to hop in on this podcast for something. It'd be very appropriate, but it's exactly what it is. There's so much stuff to talk about with spring practice getting ready to officially kick off on Sunday, March 5th. So you were at the Keenan Football Center on, was it Monday? I've got all my days mixed up now, too.
No. It was Wednesday.
Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday.
I was in Tallahassee Monday.
That's what it was. I got so much stuff going on, AJ. I know you're probably
I'm in like a 2-week stretch where I'm somewhere different every day, traveling, covering some pressers, whatever. And we had basketball presser Thursday, so pre-due 2 days in advance. So yeah, it was Wednesday morning. We had about 45 minutes with back, and then we had Freddie Kitchens for about 20, 25 minutes. Mm-hmm. Sort of Max said it was sort of the state of the program address about football and a lot of our stuff. Wednesday was a good day because I was able to immerse myself into a lot of football stuff.
Get back in the groove a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, get a lot of intel on the program and just get some questions answered about some things. And I'm definitely ready for spring practice that starts Sunday, even though we're now going into the ACC tournament just about. So
overlap, man. The overlap is officially back for another month.
I swear to you, technically Mac didn't meet with us in February. We had him the last day of January and the first day of March. So technically we didn't get Mac in February, which is pretty wild because generally we get him like at least once a month except May. May is usually the time I don't talk to him. So football is 12 months a year. It's 365.
It's a grind, man, especially even from a journalist. Even when they're off, you're not really recruiting, all that stuff going on. So but
it's also exciting. Right now is exciting too, what we're going to talk about today, Jacob, because there's a lot of news, a lot of information, there's a lot of newness, and a lot of the same in this program and in this team right now, which I think is going to make for a very interesting spring practice.
Yeah. 100%. And I want to start with the staff additions, because we haven't really been on a podcast to talk about that. You mentioned earlier, you talked to Freddie Kitchens on Wednesdays, the new tight ends coach and run game coordinator. I took we'll talk about a little bit more about some of your impressions from that. And I also want to talk about Clyde Christensen. I know you didn't talk to him, but hired as an offensive analyst for the Tar Heels. Just a ton of experience. Obviously played football at Carolina as well, but directly coached some great quarterbacks, like most recently the quarterbacks coach for Tom Brady, Andrew Luck, and Peyton Manning. So just a guy that brings a lot of experience on that offensive side of the ball, like 26 years in the NFL of experience. So I think those two hires are going to help boost this program a little bit going into this season. But I want to start with Kitchens. You can talk about, I know you didn't talk to Christensen, but I know you know a lot about him. But what were your first impressions of talking to Kitchens? Because for me, at least, from listening to the press conference, a lot of respect for Mack Brown, a lot of reverence for Mack Brown, and a guy that brings, NFL head coaching experience and coordinator experience as well. And most recently coming from South Carolina, where he was a senior football analyst. So what were your kind of first impressions of Kitchens? And then talk to me a little bit about that Christensen hire as well.
Well, a comparison would be most recently to Chip Lindsey and Randy Clements when we talked to them in January, the end of January. The two of them haven't traveled the same path that Kitchens has, and you could sort of see it in their dealings with us. Kitchens, and I'm not saying anything negative about them, it's just where they are in their careers, where their path has gone. They haven't been an NFL head coach. They haven't been an NFL coordinator, either one of them. So there's a difference when you have that kind of responsibility and you see the world through the lens of every day is the most important day in the history of your existence in the sport, which is what NFL guys have, versus guys that have been in college and various levels of college, and most recently North Texas, Troy, and Central Florida, et cetera. So, and again, that's not to speak negatively of them. It's more to illustrate Kitchens. Kitchens has had amazing experiences in the sport. He was the Cleveland Browns head coach for a year, been offensive coordinator at multiple stops. The quarterback's coach, tight ends coach, he's coached running backs coach.
Yeah,
he's coached all the different position groups in offense in the NFL. He does have college experience, but it's been about 18 years since he coached in college, except I guess last year as an analyst with South Carolina. He said he wanted to get back into the college thing. I don't specifically remember why. He didn't really go into exactly why, but I think that maybe sometimes the NFL can weigh on you because it's a different kind of year round than college is. College is year round as well. A lot of it's recruiting. I think that you have different things on your plate throughout the year in college in some respects, enough variety that it might actually keep things a little bit fresh. Sometimes the NFL is just such a grind and such a demand. And he worked in New York, in the NFL most recently, and being in pro sports in New York has got to wear on a lot of people.
Yeah.
But my impression from him is a guy that he's in front of us. There wasn't a lot of us in the media there, maybe 12 people or so, some local TV, the three main writers, I guess fourth if you consider one site has two that's at home a lot, not on the road. One goes on the road, two are at home. He's been in front of larger media contingents. He's been in front of NFL media. When you know, Cleveland is a diehard football town. It's sort of Denver, Cleveland, and Washington are very collegiate type fan bases, NFL fan bases, and so he had that in Cleveland. And you know, he's dealt with a media that they're going to call you out. They're not going to. You could almost see them as adversaries sometimes if you're a professional athlete or a coach. So he had no idea what to make of us. And I thought it was interesting, just how's he going to handle us? How's he going to respond to our questions? What kind of body language can I gauge from him? And some people might say, boy, you're reading too much into it. No, we're just trying to get a feel for him. That's all. And I'm used to doing that because I don't know how many press conferences of newly hired coaches I've been to in my life, but I do the same thing with all of them because you're just trying to get a feel for him, trying to figure him out a little bit. And I like him. I think he's the kind of guy that you can go out and have beer with and get some pretty cool stories, a little bit of intel stuck in there too. And he's also the kind of guy that's going to go out and coach his dudes up, and he's not going to leave any stones unturned. They're going to know exactly what he thinks. There's going to be no read between the lines with Freddie Kitchens. Here's a guy who has dealt with some of the best that there are. So if you're Drake May, or because he knows a lot about quarterbacks, he's obviously a tight ends coach, but he's going to have a say in that room, Matt told us. If you're John Copenhaver and Freddie Kitchens didn't like the way you ran a route, Freddie Kitchens is going to tell you he didn't like the way you ran that route. It's a totally different approach than John Lilly. And Max said that's going to be a little bit of an adjustment for those guys. But I like it. I think the staff needs some dudes with an edge. Jack Bicknell did not have an edge. Randy Clements has an edge. He's a guy that chews glass. John Lilly, really good coach, did a wonderful job at Carolina, doesn't have an edge. Freddie Kitchens has an edge. Freddie Kitchens will chew glass. Freddie Kitchens is the kind of guy that will pull you out of the bar into the back alley and rough you up some.
Man. That's what you wanted for.
And I think the staff needed that. They needed more of that. They needed more, pardon the phrase, ass kickers.
Yeah.
On this staff. And I think that with a guy like Freddie Kitchens, you have that. Plus, you bring a wealth of knowledge and experience. And how can a kid not take what he says literally, given the fact that he's worked with some of the best ever and has been at the top? He was 1 year as a head coach, but how many people were a head coach in the NFL for a year? Not many. So I think it's a great addition to the staff. I like that the staff's gotten a little bit rougher around the edges. You have two guys on the staff that might have dirt under their fingernails a little bit more than the previous guys in that position did. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
No, I don't think so either. What about, I know, like I said, I know you talked to Christensen, but just what does he bring? Because to me, I think the biggest plus with him is just his experience. He's obviously a North Carolina guy as well, but I think the experience and the coaching and the knowledge that he could bring to a guy like Drake May is something it's priceless, man. I think it's a fantastic addition to the staff as well.
Yeah, because with Kitchens, he's been around the NFL. He's coached a lot of, he's been around all these great players in the NFL, right? And then you take Christensen on top of that, and you have the Brady, Manning, Andrew Luck component there, right? So you have lots of NFL experience, lots of approaches in dealing with great players. And even average NFL players are great players. I mean, they're a lot better than what Carolina has, right? Yeah. So he's even been with a higher heap of the greats. And so if you can coach Peyton Manning to do something, then you know what you're doing. Because if a guy, a lot of pro athletes get to a point where they maybe, you really have to hire coaches in pro sports that the athletes will respect. Respect is the first thing. In college, it's sort of anointed. It's there. It's there initially. It doesn't have to be earned over time. In pro sports, it has to be earned over time. It's not an automatic thing. And if you're a guy like Christensen, over time, he's got the respect of a Manning. He's had the respect of a Brady. He's had the respect of a Luck and everybody else in the business because people keep hiring him because he's good. So he's going to be able to give them a ton of feedback on stuff, a ton of intel just based on what his eyes see. And Max said it's really important for the quarterback room because Kitchens has experience. He played quarterback at Alabama. And he's obviously been on the offensive side of the ball, so he gets that room. And then Christensen gets that room. And it's not just about Drake May. It's about recruiting this weekend with Jake Merklinger coming into town. It's about the rest of that room. They want to know what they have in Connor Harrell. Well, with those two sets of eyes watching Connor Harrell up close, they're gonna get more input on what he's all about. And I think that that's one of the things that Mac really, really wants and needs. They need more smart dudes, throwing their 2 cents into the pot to kind of figure things out. And that's what they're going to get with him. So if you want a guy that is not going to tell Mac what Mac wants to hear, he's going to tell Mac what he needs to hear, a guy like Clyde Christensen is going to do that, because the worst kind of organization you ever want are people that are going to tell you what they think you want to hear instead of what you need to hear. And you get that with him. And then when they bring in a defensive equal, which they will here in the next few weeks, Mac's going to look for someone that can do the same thing on that side of the ball because they need to get better. I think the sense of urgency at taking this thing and not being satisfied and taking this thing to that next level that Mac said he came back for is absolutely a part of these hires. Kitchens approached them, which I think is a good sign, but Christensen is absolutely about next level. We got to get this program next level. We've got to be a bit more big boy from a physical standpoint, which is why Kitchens and Clements are great hires. And from a football intellectual, see ahead of the curve stuff, which is where Christensen comes in. He can be very, very valuable.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think they're two really positive hires for the program for a lot of different reasons. So, again, we'll see how it works out during the season as well. But AJ, real quickly before we move on to we'll talk about injuries and kind of look ahead to the practice part of spring practice coming up here in a second. But I want to give a shout out to our sponsor on this podcast. You guys know who they are if you've been following all our UNC football shows over the last year. So it's myperfectfranchise.net. Check them out. So guys, if you're looking to diversify, looking to leave the corporate rat race, gain control of your own income and own schedule. What about having unlimited PTO? I mean, that sounds pretty great to me, guys. Look no further than myperfectfranchise.net. Andy Ludicky, longtime Rivals member, diehard college football fan, big Texas fan as well. So obviously got a lot of love for Mac Brown. And he's a franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses throughout his career. So what he does is he uses his expertise to help others find their American dream of potentially opening a franchise. And guys, I'll say this. The one thing I've learned from a couple of the podcasts you did with him and just learning more about what he does is there's so many different types of franchises. Unbelievable. When you think franchise,
it's not just
my mind goes,
food.
Mine goes straight to fast food, but there's so much more than that you don't think about. So what Andy does is through a completely free consultation process, again, 100% free, is he helps you kind of determine what you want to do, if this is right for you and how you can do it. And I think the great part about it is, Andy doesn't make any money unless you commit to it and make money as well. So it's not like he's going to just get some money out of you for talking to you for 20 minutes and finding out that you're not really interested. No, it doesn't work like that. Yeah. He doesn't make money if you don't make money. So guys, call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands, 100% free. What do you really have to lose? Find your perfect franchise at myperfectfranchise.net. Links in the description below, along with 2 podcasts that AJ did with Andy a couple months ago, where it talks a lot more about the business that I can give you in a quick ad read here. So go check out those podcasts as well. And if you do end up talking to Andy, make sure you talk a little Mac Brown with him, and make sure you tell him that TarHeelIllustrated.com sent you big thanks to Andy and My Perfect Franchise for continuing to sponsor us, and long may that relationship continue, AJ, let's talk about injuries, because I think that was a big not necessarily a big topic of conversation, but one of some of the insight that you got and some of the probably information that fans are most curious about going into spring ball. So I'm going to read off a list of guys that are not participating in first, and then we'll talk about guys that are limited in the spring. So not participating, you got Gio Biggers, upper body, Amani Chapin, lower body, Trevion Green, upper body, Will Hardy, upper body, and J.J. Jones, lower body. So those are guys that will not be participating in spring ball. Limited this spring, you got British Brooks, lower body, Sebastian Cheeks, upper body, Des Evans, upper body, Tamari Fox, lower body, and Caleb Hood and Ed Montelis, both with upper body issues. So they'll be limited this spring. I mean, some of these guys are a surprise. Some of these guys were injured last year. Some of these guys had surgery in the offseason. And so I think it seems like every time we do a spring ball podcast, there's about a list of 10 guys or so that aren't going to be participating or going to be limited. So again, I think it'll provide maybe some opportunities for some younger guys, because there are some experienced guys in this group that won't be doing much, if anything, in spring ball. So that could be a positive for some of the younger guys. What are your thoughts on kind of this injury list? Because for me, there's always something like this every spring, right?
Well, the first thing that's noteworthy is none of these injuries are expected to linger and, past any time in the middle of the summer. Like they shouldn't be affected by fall camp. So, and that's one of the reasons why the limited guys, they can do all the drills. They can do a lot of the stuff, but they're just not going to have full 100% speed contact. So they can still do a lot of stuff, which is a good thing. But this is also partly why there may not be a spring game. And the staff may have already decided by now. Max said they were going to meet Thursday and discuss that a little bit more. But they have 19 new faces for spring, which is incredible, because the era of early enrollment, which started about 8 years ago, it would be 2 or 3 kids. And now it's up to 10 for Carolina this year. They have 10 early enrollees that were high school freshmen, and they have 9 portal guys. They have 19 new faces. And then you have, I don't know how many names you just read off there. I think 12. Is that 11 or 12?
Let's see, 6, 7, 8, 9. Looks like 11.
11? Okay, so
yeah,
19, 11, that's 30. So that's 30 of the 85 scholarship guys that are unavailable to play, or either unavailable or brand new. Okay. So that leaves you with 55, and they need every practice they can get. A spring game, they don't get a lot out of. I asked Mac the other day, so do you really get much out of spring games? Because I know journalistically, I've covered a lot of them, and there are always guys that stand out in a spring game and we write about and talk about. You never hear their name in the fall.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, I've always wondered, what is the true value? Well, Max said getting some of the young guys or the new guys, the portal guys, in front of some fans is really beneficial. Having them compete with officials out there in a mostly game setting is very, very important. But mostly it's just to get them in front of the fans for the younger ones. The older ones don't get that much out of it. So one of the things they're considering doing is just having a practice in front of fans where they have maybe a segment where they do a little 11 on 11. It's very quick hitting. It's almost like an in-practice scrimmage when they go, let's say we're doing 22 snaps, and we're going to go 22 snaps straight. We're going to run it offense versus defense, and we're going to go like it's a game, and then we'll break off another stuff. And they have fans in there and maybe do some kind of a fan fest thing. I have a feeling that's probably what they're going to do, because as it is, 11 guys aren't going to play right now, wouldn't play in a spring game at all. Some other dudes are going to get nicked up. So let's say they 5, 6 more get nicked up and they wouldn't play in a regular season, or wouldn't play in a spring game. They would keep even more out than would not play in a regular season game. And then you have all these new guys, a lot of them maybe freshmen. How many snaps do you want to put on them in a spring game? What I'm getting to is that all the new faces and some of the significant guys that are out, they're just not going to have enough, in my opinion, to get a lot of value out of a full spring game. So they need that extra practice. And that's what I think this is about. You've got some new people on offense. You got a new tight end coach, offensive line coach, offensive coordinator / quarterback coach. The good thing is that Chip Lindsey has already been in the passing game. He's going to bring a little bit more running game, a little more physicality in the running game, a little more emphasis on the running game, and the tweaks are going to be more there than in the passing game. Randy Clements, the same thing. So, but Max says they've like they'll hit the ground running offensively, especially from a passing perspective. None of that really changes. Maybe some more defined routes instead of just fine grass.
Yeah.
But they're going to need the time necessary to get all these things on the same page, get them refined, and do as much as you can with the guys that will probably play in the fall, because so many of them are going to be out right now. They got to make some of those decisions, so they don't want to lose any of that time. So that's a long way of answering your question, that just kind of giving a snapshot of what this spring's going to be all about. And if people are disappointed there's no spring game, there will be something on April 15th where fans can go to. And Jacob, you were at the open practice last year. They have the second practice in fall camp where they let us down on the field and the fans were in the stands. And I thought that was a lot better. If they did something like that, that would be great. Yeah, I think fans get more out of it. You get to see everybody do stuff. And I'm a big drills guy anyway. I love football drills. I mean, I can eat up football drills till the cows come home. And I think that people actually get a lot more out of that. It sounds like they're fire engines in my neighborhood. Do you hear them?
I actually don't. Let me turn my volume up. I actually don't. You got a good microphone over there. Yeah.
Yeah, my street. Wow. It'll come down here.
Yeah.
That's you know what that means? It means that spring practice is here and things are hot.
Yeah, man. Things are really revving up, man. You got the sirens going off outside.
I think that was trite.
Wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't have.
Anyway, that's a long-winded way of getting to a lot of the things, but they have a lot of people to look at. They have a lot of the new guys. Max said that he's really excited to see what those new receivers. Yeah. I'm hearing amazing things about Trez Walker and Nate McCollum. That don't be surprised if they're the top two receivers on this team. Mm-hmm. Walker, we can get into portal stuff and everything else too, but he's a perfect example of how you can get a lot from the portal without shelling out. Like a lot of teams are buying dudes, and you get guys coming up from Kent State. They're not going to get the same kind of offers, but they're hungry. They're proven, but they're hungry, and they're ready to make the most out of the experience at North Carolina. And I think most of the 9, they're getting that vibe from them, because most of them are upward trajectory guys coming from smaller programs, and they love that. Mm-hmm. They love that they're getting that kind of fire with these guys. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be really exciting to see what a lot of these dudes are like. For me personally, it's going to be one of the most interesting springs because there are a lot of storylines with the new coaches, with the portal kids who are expected to help. And with some of the returning guys, I want to see Spencer Rowland. I'm hearing that Spencer Rowland has put on weight. Some people are thinking that he might be the best offensive lineman in the program. Mm-hmm. He could be an NFL guy, and that he finally is getting a full year in a program at this level to really get his body where it needs to be, and to tap into a lot of that talent that he has, talent that people didn't see out of high school, but clearly people see it now. So I could sit here talk for an hour about all the storylines. Obviously, I've already done like 12 minutes. So
well, it's so different than last year too, because it almost felt like we didn't have one last year because of like the Final Four run, and they're just, I don't know, maybe there wasn't as much newness around the program because there's a lot of staff coming back and, a lot of players. You kind of knew how things were going to work out anyway. Now there's just so many moving parts with transfers and new staff, like you said, new staff additions, all these injuries, what young guys are going to come up and maybe step up during spring and impress, and maybe, because guys are out, maybe step in front of them or at least provide a lot stiffer competition in the fall. So I think it's going to be fascinating to cover. AJ, I want to talk about as well. I know some of the other big news out of Wednesday was, I know Matt hit on kind of some of the facility upgrades as well that Carolina is doing right now. A couple of those projects are actually in full swing right now. Players Lounge is almost finished, and the new trading room is set to be completed in May. And there's also a new weight room that is planning to be built as well that's going to be kind of incorporated with the locker room. It looks like the current weight rooms around, I know you wrote this in your article, 8,000 square feet. The new one's going to be around 19,000. That's a huge jump in terms of sheer space for this program. And again, we got to tour the locker room when they first, I believe it was Mac's first year when they kind of did all those upgrades. And it was a great locker room, but I do understand what Mac was saying, where it's very tight. You go look at some of these other, programs, the locker room's extremely open and extremely big, and it's got other lounges and other things connected to it. Carolina just didn't have that luxury with the space they had down there. So in terms of these, I think these upgrades are positive. You always want to continue to upgrade for recruiting, all that kind of jazz. But I think a lot of these, from what we've seen in these facilities are, I think they're necessary upgrades too if you want to keep up with major college football. It's things you just have to do in this age we live in now.
Yeah, they're going to constantly be spending and upgrading. You need to do that. They have very good facilities as it is, but they desperately needed when they got the new locker room. That was almost like a Band-Aid project.
Yeah,
we got to get this now before we figure out what we're going to do with everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once they got the new locker room done, they got it done very quickly as well, and under budget. I think Mac was very proud of that. They had to get something in there, and the thing that was most impressive about that was the equipment cooling box that they have or whatever, and put their equipment in there, it cools and dries.
Sweet, something as cool as small as that. Yeah.
But it was a Band-Aid project to get to where they are now. And now they're going to have an elite locker room. It's going to go into an elite weight room. It's going to be as good as anything anybody has in college football. So that will be something that will show recruits that we are absolutely committed. And I think that when you play in a league that gets beaten up a lot, and you play in a program that has not had great history the last 25 years, prior to that had pretty good history, had a pretty good run for 27 years, you need to show full commitment to these kids, because what you tell them they might not remember, but what they see they'll remember when they come in. So you can outline a blueprint, show the kids this weekend, here's what your locker room and your weight room is going to look like when you get here. Like, oh, wow, that's pretty impressive. And then once it's done, they can just show them physically as is. So it's an important part of recruiting. It's an important part of having the right kind of locker room chemistry, because the way the locker room is right now, it's like aisles.
Yeah.
So it's not that open, and everybody's sort of cordoned off with their position group, which is fine. But I think a better locker room atmosphere. If you remember Rudy, and that's a small locker room at Notre Dame, but everyone was right there in the middle, and it was easier for the coach to address the team and all that kind of stuff. So they're going to have exactly what you need in there. There won't be any cordoning off or anything like that. So the facility upgrades are great. The players' lounge on top of the, I guess, on top of the training facility, there's going to be basketball court, an outdoor grill, fire pits. I mean, it's if you're going to play, you got to pay.
Yeah.
You got to build stuff.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. So you need bowling alleys and water slides. They don't have water slide, I don't think. You got to have all that stuff because everybody else has it. So you got to have it. It's just the way of the world, man. And Carolina's committed to do that. They still need more money in the collective. And I'm comfortable putting that out there. Mac has mentioned it a few times, but Carolina, the one thing Carolina does not have going in the right direction right now is a program. And people can say, well, they lost 4 in a row. Well, they still won 9 games. The whole of the program is definitely going in the right direction.
Yeah, it's on the up and up.
One area that is not, Jacob, and this is a significant issue that needs to be fixed, is the collective for football. Like, they don't have a great deal of money. They can't compete. It's one of the reasons I think why recruiting's changed a little bit. And even with the portal, they have to be careful, as it is selective as it is in the portal, because guys have to be able to get into school. Now you got to be able to go for guys that aren't going to have their hand out for a ton of money. I'm saying figuratively, because the collective isn't there to support that. They need more money in the collective. There are SEC programs that have 10 times more money in their football collective. Carolina has to be able to compete with that. When you've got donors that are building tennis facilities and golf structures and things like that and spending a ton of money on that, instead of helping to advance football, that, not that those other sports don't need that and are not worthy of that, but I think sometimes the money in the boasters, the alumni at Carolina, needs to go directly to football. If you want to win in football and you want to brag to your NC State friends, and if you have buddies from SEC schools, and if you really want to be a player in the sport that moves the needle moving forward, you've got to step up. They're not asking for money right now to renovate Kenan Stadium, which they need to do.
Yeah,
Kenan needs a ton of work.
Get that press box renovated ASAP.
Well, there's the concourse. The concourse needs to be redone.
Yeah, there's a lot of things.
I mean, the restrooms are troughs. Mm-hmm. They need a lot of work at Kenan, but they need money in the collective. You need dudes. Mm-hmm. The way they play on the field, it will be any different whether the concourse is cracked and uneven, or whether it's immaculate.
Mm-hmm.
All right. They need dudes. And this is a part of college football now, and North Carolina needs to be fully immersed in that. And your hands are tied if the collective is only this full when maybe South Carolina's is this full, as an example.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just the way it is. I mean, you might not like it, but it's just the fact of the matter. If you want to compete at college football at the major level, you got to have a lot of money invested into the program. You know what I mean? It is. Go look at these SEC schools, man. I mean, stadium wise, it doesn't compare to Keenan. No disrespect to Keenan. Keenan's a beautiful facility.
I'm talking straight collective.
Yeah.
You got to be able to keep them from leaving. The staff does not get enough credit for being really good at bringing in kids that are there for the right reasons for them. Now they're going to lose guys all the time. And let's be honest with you. Only one that left this past off season here in December, January surprised them. None of the others, they weren't tugging at their pant leg and saying, hey, wait a minute, stay here. So that's the way of the new world of college football too. These kids are getting money. They have money opportunities. They have a lot more freedom. So staffs don't feel like they have to keep a kid around, and a signed scholarship is 4 years. Well, we have to keep you for 4 years. And the kids are being treated a little bit more like pros because they want to be pros. And they want what comes with that. So that means staffs are going to nudge guys out a little bit quicker, or they're not going to beg them to stay. Because to be honest with you, if a guy leaves because he's not playing, that opens up a spot for them to find somebody else that might be able to play. So again, it's more like pro football now. And so, but you need to be able to have money in the collective to get guys. I'm going to emphasize that 1,000 times over. And that's where this program right now gets a thumbs down. And it's not Mac's fault. He needs help from the money people. He needs help from the different associations like the fan boxes and the other Heels for Life and all those different things. They need those coffers full, because it will help everything, not just football. It'll help basketball and the other sports that money goes to. And that's another thing. I just think that in this modern day and age, if you're going to spend the money on football, you need to give that collective money to football players instead of, players in other sports. I'm not going to mention the sports.
No, I completely agree. It's also the biggest revenue generator in terms of sports.
That's it. Yeah, exactly.
It's just,
if you're running a business and let's say you sell 4 different things: product A, product B, product C, and product D. And let's say product A gets the most, is like the biggest thing. You have a ton of it and everyone wants to buy it and they're mostly interested in that. And then there's the scale down to D, and D is sort of like dress socks. So you stick dress socks over on the side, right? Yeah, we're going to keep it here. People are going to buy it, but we're not going to make a mint off that. But if you're putting all your investment into advertising, promoting your dress socks, instead of your best product or your most interesting product that requires the most to keep it going, but also people are most interested in, wouldn't it make sense to push that a little bit more instead of let's have this massive campaign for dress socks when we're not going to get a return on that investment? It's the same thing with the collective. You're going to get more of a return on the investment if it goes to certain sports as opposed to other sports.
Yeah.
And I think it's great if everybody gets stuff. I'm not saying they shouldn't get stuff. I just think that North Carolina needs to do the money people need to do a better job of getting that money into the football side of things.
You got to prioritize it for sure. Let's talk a little bit more spring football specific before we wrap this one up. I kind of want to wrap this one up by talking about the offense and defense separately and kind of what we're going to be looking for going into spring ball, looking forward to kind of watching the most. And we'll start with the offense, because I think for me, there's 2 position groups that I'm interested in. I think it's that running back room. Can someone emerge in that group and really, become the guy in that room? Maybe it's 2 people that really emerge in spring and say, okay, these guys look like the guys that are going to lead this room and that can be relied upon to be my 1 and 2 go-to backs during the season, instead of what we've seen from Carolina over the years, where it's like, we're going to play 4 or 5 guys and maybe we'll stick with 1 if he's hot. And then maybe this guy will be hot the next game. I think Carolina needs to figure that room out a little bit better, because there's a lot of talent down there. And for me, it's also the wide receiver room as well. Josh Downs leaving, Antoine Green gone as well. Brought in, like you mentioned, the 2 of the transfers that have come in could be 2 of Carolina's best receivers. So that's going to be a position group as well that not only is it crucial to the offense, I know Longo's gone, but any offense that Carolina's trying to run with Drake May as quarterback, you need guys who can catch the ball because he's going to get it to him. So those are kind of the 2 position groups that I'm most interested in looking at, because you know what you got at quarterback. And I think offensive line wise, you kind of know what you have down there. Maybe some younger guys will emerge. but it's not something we've really seen over the last few years. So for me, wide receiver and running back group are what I'm most interested in seeing. What are you kind of looking forward to diving into and watching the most during spring practice?
I'll address what you said. Running back is as in limbo as it was right now as it was any time.
Yeah, they can't seem
to
finish that group out. So figure that group out. So much talent down there too. But
I also think though, with the changes they're making to the run game, it's going to be easier to figure it out.
Easier.
Mm-hmm. To be honest with you, I think some of the communication with some of the kids in that room will be different. And sometimes if you have a guy that maybe isn't by the book technically with some things, but he's just really good, you got to allow him just to be really good.
Yeah.
Sometimes coaches can overcoach or micromanage. We've seen that in Chapel Hill at times.
Yeah.
And in other sports. And I think with you, when you have someone like Omarion Hampton, for example, he'll eventually learn, how to deal with contact at the line of scrimmage just through reps and quality coaching, and Larry Porter being allowed to do his job. So you need Omarion Hampton to be Omarion Hampton, and you can't strip that down and then expect some of the same results. So I think with the new run game, it's going to help a guy like Hampton because I think it's going to play to his strengths more, and he's got considerable strengths. George Pettaway is someone that they really want to see a lot of from this spring. It's going to be a really big spring for him because he's got incredible talent, but now he's been through everything. And I think that the run game is going to be a little bit easier for the running backs now as far as some of their responsibilities. I don't know how RPO heavy it's going to be. Everything's RPO right now. In fact, Freddie Kitchen said one of the reasons he wanted to be in Chapel Hill and coach was to be in an RPO heavy offense. So there's going to be a lot of RPOs, but a guy like Pettaway has to get better at dealing with that. So then he can allow his gifts to take over as well. Elijah Green got a lot of the reps. He was basically the primary back the second half of the year. He had an opportunity to secure the number one spot. He didn't do it. He played well. He did some good things for him. He came in and showed how deep that room was by being a solid player back there, but he's not a game-breaking guy, wasn't a game-breaking guy, and didn't secure the RB1 in that room when he had full opportunity to do it. So they love Caleb Hood. They just want him to stay healthy. I think you said he's kind of like Puff Johnson of football.
Yeah.
Can't stay healthy, which is true.
Healthy, man. Yeah.
And if he could stay healthy, I think he's probably running back one going in and is the one that they can trust the most because he can do everything well. Mm-hmm. Pass protect. He's smart. He was a quarterback. Yeah, so he sees the field. He sees everything. He's got a great feel for everything. Plus he's physically got the attributes. He's faster than people. He surprised a lot of people at that run at App State because they didn't realize he was that fast, but he is pretty fast. And of course, DJ Jones going to safety, and he's going to still get reps at running back. And then British Brooks, we'll have to wait and see where British is from a health perspective once fall camp starts. And they also have a kid coming in as well, Jordan Louis coming in as well, and he's going to be there in the summer. He's not there now. So the running back room is still a giant question mark. Wide receiver, I think they feel really good about. They've got a lot of numbers. I think that they're going to be a lot closer to playing 7-8 guys on a regular basis there now. And they love, and I'm telling you from speaking to somebody inside the program who is absolutely in the know, they absolutely love Nate McCollum and Trez Walker.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that.
They absolutely love those guys, and I would pencil right now in a projection that they'll be the top two leading receivers on this team. And Walker is going to be electrifying. Carolina fans are going to, by the end of September, they're going to love him. They're so excited about seeing these guys out there, but they're also excited about seeing some of the other ones, the ones that they have coming back. What's Doc Chapman like? They don't have JJ this year, but what are some of the other holdovers? This is a big spring for Gavin Blackwell.
Yeah, huge.
This is, Kobe Pesor really did a lot in slot last year when Downs wasn't playing. I think they like him a lot. Right now, you might say that the top four receivers would be Pesor, JJJ, McCollum, and Walker. And there's still good guys around them too. So they like that room. But now you mentioned offensive line very quickly. They're an older group, like really old, Gainer is going to be in his 7th year.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of old guys there. They need to figure out who the left tackle is going to be. So that'll be interesting. Look for Diego Pounds and Trevion Green when he's healthy to get long looks at having a significant role on the offensive line. And they're kind of looking at maybe some other guys stepping forward. They have some older guys that are getting older now that are quote unquote young backups. Malik McGowan and Caden Baker have been in the program for a while. So it's kind of
make or break. Yeah.
Jonathan Adorno, who's played sporadically. Bicknell didn't like playing the reserves. I think you might see a scenario this year where they play a second unit some in the heart of games to give them reps, because after this coming season, they're not going to have any experience in the offensive line in 24. They got to get ready for that. So, and Zach Rice will be a part of that as well. So Zach still has to get stronger and get more fit and learn how to have the consistent bang at this level, because he played at a smaller high school level. And that was part of his adjustment, was just the constant physicality with monsters at this level. Different. And that's what they are. So people were kind of in the speed Zach Rice onto the field, but you don't want to put him out there if he's not ready for 60 snaps, and he wasn't ready for 60 snaps. It may not be this year. I don't know. But he's trending in the right direction, but I don't know how far he has to go from where he is now to where they could trust him at 60 snaps a game at this level. That might still be a considerable distance, but that can be closed a lot here in the spring and then in the summer.
Yeah, we'll definitely be watching definitely for him in the spring as well. Before we wrap it up, let's talk about defense. Because I think there's probably more question marks in a lot of ways on defense, just because of how much they struggled. I know they improved as the year went on last year, which is a positive. You'd expect them to really improve this year as well, under Gene Chizik year 2 in Charlton Warren as well. So defensively, I think for me, the biggest question mark, and I said this, AJ, I said this when we did our postseason podcast. I said, you guys are going to get tired of me saying it, because I said until Carolina finds a way to develop a pass rush, they're not going to have a good defense. That's the number one thing that they have to work on, is trying to develop that pass rush. Will we see Gene Chizik maybe working more with the defensive linemen? What kind of new things will we see? I know some of it's mentioned potentially the guys need to slim down there, get quicker. Maybe some guys put too much muscle on and weren't quick enough to get off those blocks and everything like that. So that's the position group I'm focusing on defense. I think the secondary is always interesting as well, but you got a lot of the guys returning back there you'd expect to kind of slot in. You've got some new faces in there as well that could slot in and do some nice things too. I think you're pretty set at the linebacker position with Power Echols and Cedric Gray. But for me, AJ, y'all are going to get tired of me saying it during the spring when we do more of these podcasts. Until that defensive line improves, to me, the defenses continue to struggle. So that's the number one thing I'm focusing on going into spring. And it's good. Let me add this too before I kick it to you. Are we really going to know how much they've improved during the spring? Probably not, because we're not seeing them go up against guys in live reps. But do we see guys, like I said, maybe they're a little bit slimmer? Oh, he looks a little bit quicker off the line. Oh, Ritzy's a little bit quicker on the end. Do we see little things like that in the spring that are signs of encouragement? We'll see what happens, but that's what I'm focusing on.
Yeah, Mac alluded to the fact that they were probably maybe a little too big. They need to be quicker off the snap.
Yeah, they just didn't seem quick enough at times, which usually means you're big. Yeah.
If you play on the line of scrimmage, having a split second quicker first step can make the entire
especially at this level. Yeah, it's all about those little small percentages.
They need to be a tad quicker off the snap, because if you're a little bit quicker off the snap and you can stay low, you're harder to block. You have better gap control that way. If you need to have the pass rush, you can get around. I mean, everything doesn't need to explain this to anybody listening. They understand how that would be advantageous. One of the things I think that people should keep an eye on that'd be very interesting is Mac brought in Christensen to be a special analyst on the offense. He's going to bring in someone for defense. I think it's going to be somebody that's like a pass rush specialist. In fact,
it makes sense. Yeah.
A little bit of some conversations have led me to believe that that's the focus, is not bringing someone who's going to sit back and oversee the whole defense. They've already got someone like that, Gene Chizik. We're talking specialists. What area do we need to improve the most? Well, pass rush. So we're not bringing a pass rush specialist whose job will be to focus on the players' pass rush, the collective group. Really just take a shovel and tunnel to the center of the earth about all things Carolina pass rush. And that's what their job would be. I think that's where they're going to go with that. They'll probably have someone in It'll be someone from the NFL and someone in within the next few weeks, because there's a lot of changes being made on NFL staffs right now. So there's a lot of people in flux, and it'll be probably one of those people is my guess. So look for that. Keep an eye on that. And when that happens, that'll be interesting as well, because we'll get Mac to talk about it and kind of give some takes on what he's hoping to get out of that. But that's my guess. I think linebacker is something that is a point of emphasis as well, because they have no depth, zero depth. The fact that Mac, before every game last year, and he kind of half jokes this, but it's real, he would tell Cedric and Power, don't get hurt and don't target, because they got nobody behind them.
Yeah.
Now they feel a little bit better. They like the direction Deuce Caldwell's going, but they don't have Sebastian Cheeks this spring. Yes. He got hurt early last year. They love his potential. He was well on his way to being a guy that this would be a huge spring for. Could be a third linebacker and someone that they would be comfortable with if something happened to Cedric or Power. Right now, they don't have that comfort. So they need to see some stuff behind those two at linebacker during spring camp. It's a big one for Deuce Caldwell. They love Caldwell's bravado. They love his how physical he is. Maybe he has to be a little bit quicker, but he has a playmaker's mindset, which they really, really like. So they need to get a couple more guys there. They're really concerned about depth at that position. And in the secondary, they have some guys out. It's going to be a lot of competition. Their two starting safeties are out, Biggers and Hardy. I think Hardy's going to start. Yeah. But the competition at corner, and they really need to be better at corner more than safety. A lot of the bad stuff we saw at safety was because of issues at corner. Mm-hmm. If the corners screw up, then the safeties have to compensate, and then they screw up. So I think they're really happy with Jason Jones, and they're going to play more bump and run coverage. They're going to play more press coverage. They're going to be more aggressive at corner. Now that has to work in concert with more of a pass rush and a consistent pass rush.
Has to, yeah.
All these things work together, but because Jason Jones is with the corners, Chizik's going to work with the front, and they want to see what they got. So they lost their two starting corners. I don't think they lose a lot with either one, to be honest with you, because Duck wasn't healthy very often. Grimes kind of plateaued and hadn't really gotten better. And it was just time. It was time for him to find a new home and time for them to move on as well.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So Elijah Huzzy's a guy that they're really excited about seeing in spring this month, because he was a highly decorated player at the FCS level. And if you look at NFL rosters, go look at an NFL roster right now, you're going to see FCS dudes on those rosters.
Everywhere.
So once you get into college, if you can play, you can play. I think that they have high expectations for him, but they're tempered right now because they want to see him in action. They want to see him out there playing with these other guys. And they're really, really looking forward to seeing that. So that's kind of where the defense is. The defense has a chance to be pretty good next year. We said this a year ago. I just think that a lot was learned. They did get better late in the year, but I sometimes addition by subtraction is a good thing. And I think we saw that, and being more fit up front with a pass rush guru being incorporated into things, and then better coverage where more of an emphasis on getting the ball is a part of their pass coverage and with their corners, I think should make them a better defense. Because a lot of the stuff that people were screaming about on the message boards and on Twitter, some of those things I think are in play right now, to be honest with you. I'm not giving them any credit. I'm just pointing out that a lot of people are wondering why certain things weren't being done. I think you're going to see a little bit more of that now on defense.
Yeah. It's last thing I'll say, it's a fascinating year and fascinating spring, because I think you've seen a shift over the last, really almost like when you think about it, last 6 months or so in terms of who Carolina is looking to bring into the program, not only with their freshman recruiting classes, but also the transfers they went out and got. It seemed like a couple, early on, it was about how much talent can we get in? We got to get those 4-star guys. We got to get those 5-star guys. We want to see how much talent we can bring in. The problem with doing that, I think that Max learned, is you're not necessarily in doing that, especially with NIL and now, which has played a massive factor. You're not necessarily doing it. You're getting guys that maybe aren't here for the right reasons or the reasons you want them to. It seems like that shifted a little bit in terms of, like you said, bringing guys from the FCS level. That's huge, because not only do they have a point to prove, they want to be here for the right reasons. I think that's an interesting thing going into the season to watch as well.
I've been I've been told by people in the program that they really like that. They like the kids with the chip on the shoulder that don't have their hands out. And another thing that has been communicated with some people in the program is if you look at a couple schools last year who bought a ton of their new players, both from high school and the portal, a lot of those guys are gone.
Yeah.
And they were there for that reason instead of there for the alma mater type thing. You remember the Beach Boys song, "Be True to Your School"? That's what they need. That's what they want. And they also want guys that look at it as a wonderful opportunity. Amari Gaynor was at Florida State, and he's a lateral portal guy, went from one ACC to another. His stop in Chapel Hill is a means to get to the NFL.
Yeah.
Because he saw because he wants to play jack. They don't have a jack at Florida State. He saw what it did for Noah Gaynor, or for Noah Taylor. He saw what it did for Tamon Fox, who was at the Giants this past year. But for the other guys, we're playing at places like Coastal Carolina and East Tennessee State and Kent State, this is an opportunity for them to go one step up, or in Huzzy's case, a couple of steps up, and show what they can do at that level. But their hands not out because they're just grateful for the opportunity. They're just there. They're there for the opportunity and to show what they can do, and the excitement of being at a bigger place, which is where they are. So that has changed a lot of the way the staff looks at stuff. Also with the high school kids, you could get what we see as a 3-star, a high 3-star in Georgia, a kid that's been overlooked by a lot of the big SEC schools that are paying kids basically to go there, and they don't have UGA offers, but they're really good. And one reason they're 3 stars and not 4s is because they're compared to all that talent in Georgia. But if they were in Virginia, for example, or North Carolina, maybe they're 4 stars. The staff loves those guys. Will Hardy's the perfect example. Kamen Rucker's a perfect example. They love those chip on the shoulder guys whose hands aren't out, and they just want the opportunity to be in a situation that is moving in the right direction and opportunity to help. And by the way, very quickly, for the people who say the program's not moving in the right direction, Freddie Kitchens doesn't call you and ask for the job, tell you he wants the job out of the blue if things are not going in the right direction. Clyde Christensen doesn't say, "Oh yeah, absolutely, I'll come. I'll serve as an analyst for you," if things aren't going in the right direction, if Mac is still not as respected as anybody in the business. So I'm not here shilling for Mac or for Carolina football. That's not my job. My job is to be completely honest about what I see. And the people that are I'm sending out the tweets during the press the other day, and people just dogging the crap out of Mac. You guys need to step back a little bit and take a look at where things were a few years ago. Okay, so they lost 4 in a row, and it didn't go as exactly as you wanted it to. Well, it went that way for every other school except Georgia last year. And maybe you could say TCU as well because they surprised people. Everybody else is disappointed. That's what fans do now.
That's true.
But you don't get Freddie Kitchens calling you saying, "I want to work with you." You don't get Clyde Christensen, and there were others too, by the way, like when the offensive coordinator job opened up. They had some interesting people. Mm-hmm. And Freddie Kitchens turned down other opportunities. I'm not going to mention what they were now and here. I don't think I'm at liberty to, but he turned down an opportunity to work with, in maybe the best situation in college football. And he turned down a major NFL opportunity as well to come to Carolina.
It says a lot. So it really does. It does say a lot.
It says a lot. And again, I'm not shilling at all. I don't do that. Most people know me, know that I don't do that. I just think that what I've learned this week about Carolina football and where things are right now should give people reason to be excited, but also concerned. The collective thing, I think, is a concern. And the collective thing is a big deal. And it's something that fans can affect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
That needs to be dealt with. Everything else head in the right direction, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe the 4-game losing streak has left such a terrible taste in people's mouths that until they play games and get wins, nothing will change. But for me, I have the opportunity to be around it in a different way and not invest myself in wins or losses because it doesn't matter. It's about the news of the program and what I view, how things are going. And so I don't carry 4 losses in the spring practice. To me, it's about look at the changes they made. What are the tweaks are they going to make? And what do they expect? What are they expecting to achieve during the spring? And what do they plan on being when they hit fall practice? So they got a very difficult opening part of the schedule. And they got to be ready, which puts more pressure on maybe getting that extra practice, more emphasis on getting that extra practice in spring instead of a spring game, which is basically a wasted afternoon for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating spring, man, for a lot of different reasons. And it's going to be a fun spring to cover, obviously, too, because like I said, it just kind of felt like we never really had one last year. And with all the new things and moving parts and fresh faces, it's a spring that, even from a journalistic perspective, we need to really invest in, because there's so many new things that we have to try to figure out and cipher through as well before the season starts. So going to be a fun
last year, I got home from New Orleans on that Tuesday, the day after. It was a Tuesday? No, it was a Wednesday. Yeah, it was a Wednesday because I drove to New Orleans because the flights were ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So I just drove back. So I got home Wednesday evening, and the next morning we had a football availability Thursday morning, and then the spring game was that Saturday. And that football availability was only my second time around the team last spring. I was around the team 3 times last spring.
Yeah, that's so
bizarre. I was gone 26 out of 30 nights during the basketball. I'm going back to the start of the ACC tournament. So went around football. I was doing football Zooms from my hotel in Brooklyn during the ACC tournament.
Mm-hmm. So weird, man. It's so weird. Hopefully, it may who knows? I mean, I don't, things aren't shaping up to happen like that again, but with Carolina basketball, I know just you never really rule anything out, do you? So hopefully we'll have a little bit more time to focus on football. I mean, I think every Carolina fan is hoping that we have no time to focus on football because Carolina's winning the national championship or something. But
it's a later spring game.
That does help out as well.
So there'll be more time.
Yeah.
And about it. The players are off for spring break during what will be the first week of the NCAA tournament.
Mm. Well, that's good. That is nice. That is good for us as well, because that's a busy week as well. Because if Carolina does what they're supposed to do over the next couple of weeks, they will be playing in that. But again, even that's a coin flip.
And for us in the media, they're going to send Carolina to Mongolia to play. So we're going to have to. I just hope they don't go to Dayton. I don't want to do. I got to get right to Dayton and get from Dayton to Laos.
Yeah. Cambodia or something like that. Yeah.
Peru.
Who knows, man? Yeah. It's like I always like to wrap these podcasts. We'll see what happens, not only with basketball for the sake of football, spring football, but we'll see what happens with football during the spring as well. It's going to be a fun one to cover. Yep. Make sure you keep it locked to TarHeelIllustrated.com. Let me say this as well. From the press conference reports, if you haven't seen those that AJ put out on Wednesday afternoon, go check them out. Big one on Mac and big one on Kitchen's press conference. A lot of good notes and a lot of stuff that we talked about today was from those as well. So go check those out. TarHeelIllustrated.com. You can sign up for just $8.33 a month to be a premium member. And it's a great time to do so. If you haven't noticed, we're in the overlap again. So football, basketball simultaneously going on. Recruiting never stops. So there's so much things that are going on right now, and you can only access it if you're signed up as a premium member. Again, just $8.33 a month. Links in the description below. Big thank you to MyPerfectFranchise.net and Andy Ludicky as well. Check them out and make sure you watch those podcasts as well. If you want to learn a little bit more, links to those are in the description below. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another episode of the UNC Football Show. This might be our most jam-packed one in a lot of ways, AJ. A lot of them are just during the season or more like preview podcasts. And now this is so much stuff going on. A lot of intel.
I had no idea how long this was going to go. We're like, yeah, we can get it in 40 minutes, no problem. I think we went over 40. I think I went over 40 and when I rambled on for goodness knows how long.
Well,
I get rambly because there's so much I want to get out there, and there's so much that I get excited about just from a standpoint of covering a team. I just go on and on and on and on.
Well, and we don't get a ton of time to sit down and talk like this during the week because I have a job. You're doing covering the team, and then even during games, like if we're covering games, there's not a lot of time to just sit there and chat for an hour. You're covering the game, so it's sometimes our time just to chat about things Carolina-wise and non-related. Yeah. So it's always fun talking about that, but we could turn that into a podcast, but we might be getting a few phone calls if we did that. if we started recording those conversations. So we'll leave that one off the air for good reason.
But cuss words or just maybe divulging things that we can't divulge?
Yeah, publicly. Probably a little bit of both, to be honest with you, AJ. But again, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up because we're probably getting close to the hour mark. I've been Jacob Turner. Again, he's been Andrew Jones. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well so you know every time we upload. And again, we are in the overlap, so there's going to be a lot of uploading going on over the next month. So appreciate you guys watching. See you in the next one. Thanks.